Well, it's another week where, I don't know, more storm clouds than anything. Kind of feel like lately, that's just kind of how it's been. We need some sunshine here. It's been rough news after rough news. And I don't know. We're hoping that our panel this week, brings the heat, but maybe a little sunshine too. I don't know if you're expecting Chris or Michael to do that. I guess all of our hopes are on Michael there, but we've got an awesome group. So let me do some introductions and then we'll get into our topics for the week. We've got Chelsie Leffelman. She's the campaign manager for Brandon Schweizer and Reagan Deering. Also a proud graduate of the Lincoln series. Woohoo. And a big advocate for improving education in Illinois. Chelsie, you're also with the Citizen Farmers and you do a bunch of other things. What's up? Thanks
Yeah,
for being here.
of course. I'm glad to be here, coming to you from Lyle at my favorite cigar lounge.
It's funny. Oftentimes, when I have somebody on who actually smokes with me, it's usually like a badass chick like you who's like, "Yeah, I'll smoke." Meanwhile, Chris and Michael, they just got their Zin. They just chew.
And
I
Michael
think,
drinks the Bush Light, which isn't even
yeah,
beer.
yeah.
It's
So
so good.
thanks for bringing a little cool to my podcast since I
I
can't count on my
try.
own team to do it. We've also got with us David Blumenshine. He's a member of the Bailey Del Mar governor campaign, though that's not official yet, so I don't want to speak out of turn. But I know you've been a radio show host in the past. You've been a candidate yourself in the past. David, I'm glad you're with us.
Well, thank you for adding that. My wife cautioned me about actually overstating what I really do, which most of the time, as Chelsie can, and I am so thankful that Chelsie is on today because she is one of my favorite political operatives in this state. She's very qualified, and I'm looking forward to hear a little bit from Chelsie today. She said we haven't talked much. We've been texting back and forth. I did not realize she would be on the show today, so thank you for having me on today.
Yeah, we try to keep it a little bit of a mystery. Have it be a little
Yeah,
fun.
no, it's a good surprise.
Usually, with some of our guests, I'll tease them like the Finkstons of the world. If we tell people ahead of time, they'll all cancel on us. So
Yeah.
sometimes you gotta hide it. I'm gonna get some text messages from him on that one. All right. So Chris, Michael, either one of you guys gonna bring both the heat and maybe a little sunshine? I'm looking over at you, Michael, because I can't really rely on Chris.
Is it always my job to bring that? I guess so.
I mean, a little
Listen,
bit. I don't know. I
listen,
mean,
Collin. I can promise you the heat. I can't promise you the
can
sunshine.
you
You know,
promise me
I'm-
the heat? I mean, you were on last week, but at this point, it's kind of hit or miss.
listen, Collin. That's what you're getting from the Chris Jackowiak experience. You get the highest of highs and the lowest of lows, and you got to. If you want me at my best, you got to handle me at my worst. And that's why I've been telling my mother for the last 25 years, and it's been holding up until this point.
Is that your line at your first date, and is that why second dates are hard to come by?
Listen, Collin. The less you know about my love life, the better, brother.
This is true, since I guess I double as HR. So we'll move on before I get myself in trouble.
I think if
Uh,
you want the heat, you need to bring up public unions again.
I think on this podcast, I'm kind of sad it's not on the agenda because I think we could have some fun on this podcast with that topic. Let's get through our first topic here. This isn't political. This isn't necessarily a news topic. It's simply an in memoriam topic. So we don't have to spend a lot of time here. I know many of us may not have even known Jim Edgar personally. I know I didn't, so I can't pretend to have some deep thoughts on Edgar. His time in politics was when I was a very young boy. I know him he endorsed some of my candidates later on. Obviously, I've seen him speak out on some things, but don't know him, so I'm not going to pretend to have some deep loss here, but certainly a loss for the state of Illinois as Jim Edgar has passed. He was governor, one of the few fiscally responsible governors, fiscally conservative governors we've had in the last, I don't know how many years. So even just at that level, it's a loss. Don't know how many of you will have thoughts, or maybe you don't have thoughts, but certainly open it up if anybody has anything they'd like to share before we get on to our usual topics.
I mean, I think he had a big impact on our state, especially Republican politics during that era. And then even after he had retired, he had the Edgar Fellowship and things of
Mhm.
that nature, trying to bring in, the next generation of leaders. And he always tried to do it, in a bipartisan way, which I think is appreciated, especially with, how the climate in this state is and the country right now. I mean, you hear the rhetoric out of Pritzker and others, and it is kind of nice to hear somebody that doesn't elevate it to that level. It's rare.
That's true.
I think
Well,
I
and I
think he's the type of politician we're not going to get much more with everybody trying to get the clickbait, the TikToks, the 10-second clips, and you appreciate somebody that was just in it for the public service part, not for what comes after the public service.
That is true. I mean, so many of these politicians nowadays, it's simply about my current job so I can get a better job.
Hmm.
And no one can deny how much Edgar loved his home state of Illinois, like or dislike the things he did. To your point, Chelsie, I love that point that, he genuinely did want to serve his state and it wasn't a stepping stone to something else, which I think is a great point.
Well, I appreciate the fact that he worked in higher education. Also, I don't know how many guests you have on your show that actually had Jim Edgar on their driver's license at one time.
There you go. Yeah, usually we have a better balance. Today, you're kind of our representative of the more experienced generation. So yeah,
Still young at heart.
The old man in the cornfield. Yes. Well, and another thing, Collin, I think that's kind of important, at least I think it's important, is, back in Jim Edgar's tenure, is he resided, or he was the governor over a state at that time that just barely went into debt. So we were a state that did not have a debt. In fact, 1999, they were running ads in the Peoria Journal-Star. Keith Summers was wanting to know what to do with the surplus that they had in the state of Illinois.
That was a thing in Illinois?
Believe it or not. See, that's why you get the old man advantage.
Sheesh.
My thoughts on Edgar are similar to mine on George Ryan when he passed. But Edgar's politics weren't my own. But you have to respect a man's political ability when you win 101 out of 102 counties in the state, and the one he lost wasn't even Cook County, I believe. I believe he lost Gallatin County. So that just shows how much of a political force Jim Edgar was in the 1990s, and it kind of shows how far the Republican Party has fallen to where we could have a governor be that popular and not attract any serious opposition. To where nowadays we have to wait for petition season to even find a candidate for governor. So it harkens back to kind of a better time for the Republican Party, even if the ideology back then wasn't necessarily my own.
Yeah, I'll do this quickly and we can go on. Again, I didn't know him, so I'm not going to pretend some deep loss here, but I do know many who did know him. And I did my best when this news had broken to just share support for them. I mean, that's really what ends up happening here. Edgar is gone. It's his family, it's his friends, it's the people he touched closest. They're the ones that feel this hurt, just like with Charlie Kirk. It's the people that knew him, that were around him, that feel that hurt. And so to me, here's the thing I'm working on. I may have done this badly in the past. I don't know. And someone I'm sure will pull a clip and show me that I did this badly in the past. I'm going to try to avoid the whole, I disagreed with X, or, we weren't always on the same page, but they've passed, and so I'm going to say a few nice things. And I don't mean, if any of you did that, and Chris, you kind of just a little bit did that. I don't mean disrespect to you guys. It's something I'm personally working on. When somebody passes, you remember them for their best. We're not going to pretend like, any human was ever perfect, because nobody was perfect. But to honor them, and more importantly, the people around them who are feeling this pain, you remember their best, and that's it. You don't bring up anything else. So that's what I'll remember with Edgar. He fought hard. Huge opposition to try to put the state on a fiscally responsible path. That deserves a huge amount of respect. He was one of only 43 people in the millions and millions of people who have called Illinois home, one of only 43 to serve as our governor. There's a lot of history here and a respect that's earned, and I'll honor that. And I'll simply move on and not get into some of the other back and forth about policies and stuff. We can do that another time. And to those who are feeling this hurt the most, certainly my heart is with you, and you're in our prayers. All right, let's go to our next topic. Let's go from a governor who I believe has earned our respect to a governor who has not earned our respect, in J.B. Pritzker. Usually when we do this podcast, we have one, maybe two instances of Pritzker the hypocriting, which, by the way, is a word. If you go to Urban Dictionary, my generation, we're allowed to make up words like that, so don't fight me on it. But this is a rare week where Pritzker actually had not one, not two, not three, but four instances of showing what a gigantic hypocrite he is. Let me give these instances, and then you guys can take it, pick whichever one or whichever ones you want to hammer on and go for it, because he absolutely deserves it. Let's start with this. After the situation in Chicago, I think it was Friday, where ICE was trying to arrest an individual, and he fled the scene and hit and dragged an ICE agent with his car, and then agent or agents opened fire and ended up killing that individual. J.B. Pritzker said this. He said, "We've seen a death on Friday as a result of ICE entering communities." Rightfully so, the RNC research on Twitter came out and said, hold on a second. The death was of an illegal alien who resisted arrest, fled, hit and dragged an ICE agent with his car, and then forced that agent to open fire to protect his own life. But this is Pritzker. Obfuscate, make up sort of, oh, see, it was ICE that led to somebody dying. Like, this is what they do, especially J.B. Pritzker. That's just one example. Let's keep going. Here, at the Cap Times Idea Fest, Pritzker was asked about redistricting and mid-decade redistricting, and he went on his usual thing about how awful it is and how Trump and Republicans are giant cheaters and Democrats are great. Here's the reason why I'm calling him out as being a Pritzker, or being a Pritzker, being a hypocrite on this, is he said, listen, it just can't be the good Democrats that are doing independent commissions, as if trying to hint that he was one of those good Democrats who was doing independent commissions while Republicans and Pritzker were doing the cheating. Of course, I don't have to remind you all that J.B. Pritzker signed one of the most, if not the most, gerrymandered map in the whole country after promising he would veto it. So trying to lump himself in with the good Democrats that are doing independent commissions, pure Pritzker, but it's total BS, and it's number 2. Number 3 here, when Jimmy Kimmel was suspended indefinitely from ABC for comments he made on about Charlie Kirk, J.B. Pritzker immediately came out and said, it's an attack on free speech. This can't happen in a free and democratic society, blah, 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 blah. Over and over, we have watched J.B. Pritzker want to and try to actively silence Republicans and anybody who holds a position that he doesn't agree with, especially anybody tied to Donald Trump. But suddenly, cancel culture comes from somebody on his side of the aisle, and this is the end of democracy as we know it. Hypocrisy number 3. The final one here, this one's obvious because we've been talking about it the last 2 weeks, as J.B. Pritzker continues to blame Donald Trump for Charlie Kirk's death and say that it's Trump and just the Republicans who need to tone down their rhetoric. Yet again, he had a news conference this week where, of course, he tried to blame Pritzker and tried to blame Republicans. A reporter, in a very weak way, tried to be like, well, some people, some Republicans have said, that you are kind of, not really doing this the right way, that you're blaming Trump still, and that's not appropriate. And of course, Pritzker comes right back. Well, anybody who's fomenting attacks, I'm going to go after him. It's all Pritzker, or it's all Trump's fault. It's not my fault. Kudos to Dabrowski and his campaign for coming out immediately and ripping that one to shreds, as did other Republicans. But that was hypocrisy number 4. So you've got a lot to work with to my expert panel. Pick whichever ones you want and go to town, because Pritzker deserves it this week. Don't everybody jump at once. Come on.
Well, I mean, it's hard to pick which one. Golly. I would say, the audacity of the man and who he is, spending 6.5 years leading the state of Illinois, obviously in a direction that is not going to recover anytime soon. In fact, hopefully we're able to replace J.B. Pritzker as the governor of Illinois and start unraveling some of the destruction that he has created in our state. But I don't know. I mean, I think that it's more than just, it is. It's at the heart of who we are as people of Illinois. I've often commented that JB lives in the land of make-believe rather than the land of Lincoln. I mean, how can you believe anything that comes out of his mouth? Because he even said that he lives rent-free in Donald Trump's head, because Donald Trump has nothing else to deal with as the president of the United States other than J.B. Pritzker.
Yeah. J.B. Pritzker, who can't even make it onto national polls and national lists of who might be the next Democratic nominee for president. But sure, we all, maybe us in Illinois who are Republicans, he lives rent-free in our heads because he's the governor. We want to take him out. But I think nationally, Republicans aren't super worried about J.B. Pritzker.
I think it just shows that his inability to read the room and to read the political tea leaves. I mean, illegal immigration, that's an 80-20 issue. After these outsized and abhorrent remarks that we've had from so many people on the left, not just the crazy left, but mainstream liberals that are in the New York Times and stuff like that, a lot of Americans are waking up and saying, oh my gosh, your guys' rhetoric this entire time that we just kind of took as you being hyperbolic, trying to score political points. It has real world ramifications, and we don't like it because we see our brothers, our sons, our fathers, our uncles in Charlie Kirk. And it's showing that he's completely begotten to his base and he has no idea on how to actually navigate the political winds.
Well, the thing is that Pritzker doesn't have to care about the middle. Pritzker doesn't have to care about polling. Pritzker, frankly, does not care about the opinions of the average Illinois. Pritzker's purpose in everything he says and everything he does is to benefit the base of his party, to appeal himself to donors, and appeal himself to a national audience. As someone said, it hasn't worked. It hasn't been working for a while now. But as long as Pritzker has national ambitions, you're not going to see any type of moderation or appeal to the majority, or at least the middle, in American politics or Illinois politics. Because in Pritzker's mind, he already has the Democratic Party. And he already has a whole swath of people who will vote for him, even if they don't like him, because they just don't want to vote for the Republican nominee for one reason or another. Pritzker believes, and he may be right, he may be wrong, I think he might be right, Pritzker believes that he could just waltz into re-election. He might only need to spend $1 million. He'll spend $90 million. He'll waltz right in and then turn around and run for president. So the thing that needs to happen, and has needed to happen for some time, is that there needs to be some strategy by the Republicans or by some opposition group, what have you, to essentially say the emperor is not wearing clothes. You have to find a way to bring Pritzker's approval rating down to such a degree that he would have to start playing back towards the middle, but he has no intent to do that right. So that's what you're going to look out for here. If you see Pritzker's approval rating drop, expect it to moderate. If it doesn't drop at all, he's just going to keep saying the same stuff and doing the same stuff without any repercussions.
Well, we've seen a little bit of a drop, in recent weeks. I mean, I understand that it was just one poll, right? And it barely had him underwater. So it's going to be interesting to see as he continues this rhetoric and keeps making these mistakes, like he has the past, 6, 7 months. Will he continue to take a hit there? Because I think you look back over time, Republican and Democrat, some of these governors and U.S. senators that decide that they're going to run for president and they take their attention off their, home state and the people that they represent and start campaigning all over the country. They're happy when you do that, whenever you're, top 3 in the polls in the Democratic primary, and man, that's my governor and he may be the next president. But when you look at these polls now, I mean, a lot of them, Pritzker's not even showing up on the list, period. And if he is, he's like at 2%. So do people in, DuPage and Lake and Cook and some of these counties look at that and say, man, I really wish he'd just come back home and do his job because he's polling at 0%? I mean, that's a liability for him, especially if there's a governor candidate that, can, on the Republican side, that can put up a good fight.
Well, yeah, sure, Butler, you're right. But, again, people are going to think that, but their actions might not reflect that. I think polling indicates, and just anecdotal conversations with pretty much any Illinoisan will tell you that Pritzker isn't the most popular governor in the entire country. And he's not, because people recognize the fact that he's not really doing anything for the state. But the problem is when there's a culture of fear in the state of Illinois that you have to vote for J.B. Pritzker because the Republican over there is some extremist, or they believe this, and you don't like that suburban voter, right? You don't like that. So don't keep voting for Pritzker, even if they don't like him at all. And that's why it's incumbent on the Republican Party to actually provide a viable alternative to Pritzker, or else those same people, even if they don't like him, they'll vote for Pritzker anyway because they just don't want the alternative, what they might perceive to be the alternative.
And people wonder why I'm so hard on these potential Republican candidates for governor, because we got to take Pritzker out. So let's go on to another Pritzker topic. This one's about as ridiculous as they come. We've talked about these sort of peacekeepers and these community violence initiatives or intervention programs. Talked about it a few times in the past week, but Every Republican outlet, every Republican campaign, every Republican organization needs to be pointing to this story. It broke today, Thursday, as we are recording this. It broke a little earlier today. But there was a peacekeeper who took a photo with Pritzker, and then a few days later, they participated in that burglary, which got a bunch of press on the Magnificent Mile, where it was a crash and grab, if you will. And then as they were speeding away, ran into a car and killed an innocent man who, by the way, was on his way to work and then was going to take parental leave because his wife was about to give birth to their first child. And that child was born now without a father because of this individual. And this person took a photo of Pritzker. Lane will bring it up on screen. And then just a few days later, and was getting, by the way, taxpayer dollars as part of this Peacekeeper program. So taxpayers were lining this dude's pockets. And oh, by the way, at the time that he was being paid taxpayer dollars and taking that photo with Pritzker, he was wanted in 4 different states for crimes. And yet we were paying him money to be part of this Peacekeeper program. And then he does the crash and grab and kills a guy as one trying to speed away from the crime. This is ridiculous. This is the most Illinois story right now that I have seen in a very, very long time. What thoughts do you guys have on this?
I mean,
it just tracks.
Yeah.
It tracks with the insane ideology they have for this is how you fight crime. I don't know anybody that could possibly be shocked by that here in Illinois.
I mean, I think it's just sad state of affairs. Like we have this, like, why aren't we investing more money in law enforcement, people that, get background checks and go through training and keep our communities safe? Instead, we're investing in programs like this where we're paying individuals like this to,
We're paying them not to commit crimes. I mean, that is
Yeah.
the strategy here. We are literally paying people saying, please stop committing crimes. We'll give you money to do it. And then, of course, over and over and over using these lines, which have been proven to work. This was clearly in a memo, which was put out to Democrats and all their friends in the media to just constantly say that this has been proven to work. I'm still waiting for the actual proof, by the way, that this has been proven to work. What they have proven is that crime is down around the country, including in Chicago. That's what's been proven. But because we don't have any stats, because Pritzker and his departments refused to release the recidivism rates since 2022, we have no stats to know if these programs are actually truly proven to work. I could imagine that some people will say, fine, if you want to line my pockets with money, I'll stop committing crimes. So I'm sure that there are some people who are no longer committing crimes, but you're telling me this is making long-lasting change in the city of Chicago. I'm going to want to see some actual proof of that before I'm going to jump on board with how amazing these programs are. And we see right now in a situation where, at least in this instance, this program was not so amazing.
Well, something I find pretty unbelievable is that we've underfunded and unfunded the public pension system in the state of Illinois to the point that I don't know how it's the point of no return almost. But yet those groups of people continue to support the spending on programs like this, knowing that their livelihood isn't even being funded. That to me is something that just blows me away, because at some point you're not going to be able to afford the government that we have.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right, David. I think their assumption is that you just raise taxes on the rich and you'll be fine. So I don't think they think as logically as you think, but I mean, kudos for being logical.
Will never move.
Yeah. But
one of the things I love about it, though, is also, so a lot of times you hear one of the reasons people will say people commit crime is that they're poor. Okay, well, let's give these people who are committing crimes money, and let's actually let's test out this theory. Will they, now that they have money, actually stop committing crimes? We already now have this one data point. No. So it's not a poverty thing. It's a values thing.
And they may go hand in hand. I'm called squishy and whatever, that's fine, but I am actually willing to invest in programs in addition to supporting our law enforcement. I think you need to hold people accountable for the actions they take, but also give them support and try to help them find a different life outside of crime. I believe you can do both things. My problem with Pritzker, Democrats, and the left in this state is it is only the one. It is only let's ignore law enforcement. Let's make their jobs as hard as possible. Let's disrespect them, and let's only invest in one half of this equation. That's my problem with this sort of mentality. And I think we see the fruits of that labor or lack of labor. I mean, Chris, I don't want to put you on the spot here, but I know you noted that in Chicago, even the Chicago Police Department superintendent has admitted that crime is still a problem in the city. This idea that crime is just fine in Chicago isn't true, right? I'm not crazy here.
Right. I mean, and Snelling did an editorial with the Chicago Tribune and did Chicago Police Superintendent Snelling. And like everybody's pretty much on the same page that like Snelling's hiring was like the only good thing Brandon Johnson's done in the 2+ years he's been mayor at this point. And Snelling in the article says like, yeah, like the way we're fighting crime that's working in Chicago is that we're working with the federal government and the state's attorney puts people in jail sometimes. Like that's what he says working in the city of Chicago. And he says, yeah, like anybody who tells you that Chicago doesn't have a crime problem is wrong. Now, he also adds a disclaimer that it's not as bad as like the alarmists are saying. And there's a reasonable debate to have about that point, perhaps. But in general, the fact that the smartest person in the room in the mayor's office right now, the police superintendent, is still saying that crime's a problem in the city of Chicago and we got to, start coming down on people more. Like, that's important to point to. But Kyle, I want to add something else on this because I was going to mention this before you called me out on this particular issue. But like the thing, because you mentioned this is the typical Democrat governance, but the problem is like this isn't the Peacekeeper idea isn't necessarily a bad one. But what the Democrats do is they come up with like a halfway decent idea, whatever, and then they throw the money at it and do the bare minimum. Because it's not necessarily about the success of a particular program the Democrats want. It's the fact that they can say we have spent this much money on a particular program that claims to do this. Because it's not about the results, it's about the message for the Democrats. And that's something that I think a lot of people don't understand. Like we view these initiatives as backwards or stupid or whatever, but let's imagine for a moment these peacekeepers were actually effective at their jobs and they were able to curb violence in the city of Chicago and they were actually able to reduce the crime rate somehow or deal with these types of situations. Like we rightfully give the governor and the state of Illinois praise for launching an initiative that actually worked. The problem is that it's not the result. The goal is not the result. They just want to say they're doing something while keeping the problem the same.
I mean, listen, we see that with DCFS all the time. Every time someone brings up the problems at DCFS, what's Pritzker's response? Well, we have raised their budget by X millions of dollars. That's it. It's never like, I'm personally investing myself in fixing the problems and saving our most vulnerable kids who are dying and being abused. It's not that. It's, oh yeah, we gave them an extra 20 million or whatever it might be. That's it. That's it. That's the end of the response. So Chris, I think you've hit on something pretty solid there. All right,
it's all about the press release at the end of the day, right? Where they can say they're doing something, but does it really have the impact? Probably not.
It's all the many press releases about the 50 jobs that Pritzker just quote unquote created by giving away millions of taxpayer dollars. It's governing by press release, Michael. You're right.
And where are these jobs for me, I ask?
Well, there's a lot of people in Illinois. You got to have a lot of press releases with 50 jobs at a pop before you can find one for a good old Chris.
Yeah, that's right.
All right, let's go to the next topic here. This one's okay. I'm cheating a little bit here. Number one, we've got new guests who may want to speak about Charlie Kirk. That news is still very much on all of our minds. And I'm just a little bit frustrated, I'm not going to lie, with how much the left and just social media in general is taking quotes out of context. And yes, I know we all do it. I admit that I have done it for political gain. But to the level they're doing it after somebody was assassinated in order to incite even more hatred and what will ultimately become even more violence is really just sickening to me. And so I wanted to just point out a couple of these because just it was boiling my blood a little bit this week because we have proof. We have proof that this individual who committed this assassination did it because they thought Charlie Kirk, literally, here's the quote, was full of hate and was spreading hate. I've had enough of his hatred. Some hate can't be negotiated out. This individual was convinced that Charlie was just so full of hate that you were doing the right thing for the planet by removing this individual from the planet. And that is the problem. When we continue to demonize our opposition, when we continue to purposely take them out of context in order to make them seem like an awful human being. We saw it with the New York Times in their initial reporting where they claimed that Charlie was an anti-Semite and they had to retract that. Turns out Charlie was actually talking about a social media post on his podcast and critiquing it, but the New York Times just took out the language Charlie said about the social media post and then ran it as if that was Charlie's statement, just blatant taking him out of context to try to claim he's anti-Semitic. You had Stephen King, who said that Charlie was advocating stoning gays to death, and then ended up having to retract it because actually that was Charlie saying that some people cherry pick biblical passages and shouldn't do so. But of course, they took it out of context and said Charlie wanted to stone gays, even though I've worked with plenty of Charlie's colleagues at TPUSA who were gay, and Charlie was okay with it. They were proud of it, but okay, whatever, let's take it out of context. You, of course, have the Second Amendment one, where people say, well, look, Charlie got what he deserved because he said that it's worth some gun deaths, so it was his turn, as some people said. And yet the whole quote there was him defending the Second Amendment as a foundational defense of our democracy, that it's your defense against tyrannical government. That's why the Second Amendment is there. If you take the whole quote, you can understand the point that he was making. But of course, if you cherry pick just one line, which is what they're doing, they make it seem like it's an awful thing that he said. And finally, the last one. This is the one that set me off, which is why I'm saving it for last. This quote I've seen over and over, that people who say, well, I don't feel bad for Charlie or Erica or anybody else because he said that he hated empathy. That I can't stand the word empathy. I think empathy is a made-up New Age term that does a lot of damage. They stop there and they say, look, see, we don't have to feel bad for him. But here's the rest of the quote. He said, I much prefer the word compassion, and I preferred the word sympathy. Empathy is when you try to feel someone's pain and sorrows as if they're your own. Compassion allows for understanding. I'm actually 100% on board with this because I am sick and tired of seeing so many people trying to get in their feels for Charlie. It's for Charlie that I'm going to tell you how much I know him and how much this is hurting me. Please like my post and make me feel better about myself. That's empathy, and that always drives me crazy. This is about Charlie and Erica and the people closest to them. This is not about us. We can learn from this, but stop trying to make his assassination about you. That's empathy, and I'm so glad he spoke out about that. I love words like compassion. We should be feeling for them instead of being so effing self-centered, which is what we are in this day and age, that everything's about us. That was his point, but of course they take the one little quote, cherry pick it, and try to make him seem like an awful human being. This is where we are now in our society, and it drove me crazy, so I wanted to talk about it. I don't know if you guys have thoughts too, or if this is just me on my soapbox, but feel free to jump in.
There's a really great book by Paul Bloom called The Case Against Empathy that I think everybody, especially every conservative, needs to read because it makes that point exactly. Essentially, you get tunnel vision, and it's bad governance, and it's just bad for society as a whole. So that's just a book recommendation. But then going back to this, taking him out of context, they're purposefully doing it. It's so blatant at this point that you can't even say, oh, they accidentally did this. I mean, when the New York Times had to post that correction, I don't even think you can call it a correction, what they did. It was mediocre, half-hearted at best. And it speaks to this rot that we have in our culture, where if somebody disagrees with us, we automatically assume that it's for the very worst reason. And we've also broadened out what it means to be a racist, to be a homophobe, to be transphobic. We've broadened out these definitions to where they actually have no meaning anymore. He could say something totally true about DEI and merit, and because somebody disagrees with it, suddenly he's a racist because they've expanded that definition. We need to go back to
everything is hate now. Every speech is hate.
Everything
I disagree
is
with
hate.
you. You're hateful.
Yeah. And then you have Pam Bondi saying something about hate speech. There's no such thing as hate speech. Okay, there's speech that is hateful, but also we also have to be looking at our jobs as parents. And I know that he came from a religious family, but our job is to be teaching our kids. Somebody can say something very, very hateful, and it doesn't mean you get to do anything to them. I mean, I'm teaching it to my 5-year-olds, and everybody knows toddlers are uncivilized. That's the job of a parent. We are supposed to civilize our children, teach them how to exist in polite society. But we've gone so far to where if somebody is hateful, it's now so personal that it actually is seen as an attack, as like a genocide on people who are trans, to say men cannot become women. It's at their very core. And we have to go back to redefining our terms, agreeing on those terms, and saying it's okay to disagree with each other.
Yeah, and I mean, listen, my wife and I and others, we've had these conversations. There are absolutely positions that Charlie held that he believed in that you could disagree with as a human being. There are some that he held that I disagreed with. That is perfectly okay. He was not perfect. He's human. So, like, if
Yeah.
you want to say like he
And
believed X and I disagree with this, then let's have that kind of a conversation, and that's a good thing. That's what Charlie wanted us to do in the first place. Even you
yeah,
mentioned him bringing up talking with people who were trans. There were videos of him speaking to someone who said, like, listen, what I want for you is to be proud of the body that you were given, that I think he said that God
hmm
gave you. And again, you may not be
yeah,
religious, you may not agree with that stance, but like it wasn't hateful. It was actually in love, saying that like I want you to be proud of who you are and and for society to accept you as who you are, not force you to change into something else. Again, you may disagree with him on that stance, but you can't tell me that was coming from a place of hate.
not at all, not at
You
all.
know, I put something up on my social media page, oh, let's see, 3 or 4 days ago. Because from my early background in life, I attended pretty much the Catholic Mass, and I also
We'll
was
welcome you
in,
back, David. Don't worry.
yeah, that's right, Chelsea. So I know Chelsea will appreciate this. So John Paul II, and you had just mentioned, Colin, that, when and how did this kind of evolve and devolve to the point where we're at now? And Pope John Paul II had pointed this out. He wrote in a whole encyclical about, did I say that right, Chelsea?
Yes, you did. You did.
Oh,
Yes.
thank you, Chris. Chris knows about
Yeah.
his catechism too. Um, we are facing an enormous and dramatic clash between good and evil, death and life, the culture of death, which is what he referred to it as, and the culture of life. We find ourselves not only faced with, but necessarily in the midst of this conflict. We are all involved and we all share in it. And I think that's something that we run away from. We are all part of the current climate that is out there. And where do we stand? I mean, at the end of the day, you either are for good or you're for evil. I mean, can you resonate in the middle? I don't know how somebody does that, but for me, how I choose to move forward in life is I'm always going to defend life. And granted, this is outside the issue of abortion. I believe in life, and I think Charlie believed in life, and I believe he believed in the giver of life, and that's what he stood for. So, how a man who could stand for that uh, could possibly be the things that he's defined by those who obviously did not agree with him. I would call a lot of those people very radical in their thought process and how they manifest themselves. But I think we all can do a better job at you know trying to be better people. I mean, that's at the end of the day, that's what it's about.
Yeah.
I agree with that for
And I
sure.
think the point can't be made enough that Charlie Kirk he was a mainstream Republican, mainstream conservative. He was pro traditional marriage, pro life,
Mhm.
wanted people to go to church, loved Israel, supported the state of Israel. He wasn't, there was nothing about what he believed that was anywhere radical. I mean, there was a Groiper war against him from the far right. He was, I mean, you have right, here's the middle. Charlie was here. He is where your standard average Republican is on almost every single issue. So if he's a radical, if what he's saying is hateful, then what I'm saying is hateful. What I'm
Which is
teaching my
basically the left's
children is
point.
hateful.
Which
Yeah,
is the left's point that we,
which is
we are all
everybody.
hate-filled human
Yeah.
beings,
And you
and
can't have a society that way, a
yeah,
culture. You can't have a country that way.
yeah.
I am absolutely livid that I was not the first person to ever quote John Paul II on this podcast.
You can't call yourself Catholic anymore.
No,
Jeez,
no,
Chris.
I will be going Serbian Orthodox in the future. God help me. In any case, I think David makes a phenomenal point in regards to the culture of life versus the culture of death, because you have to understand that the left is playing the game on their own terms. Okay, they're playing the game in their own headspace, and that's
Mhm.
why they view every type of right wing deviation from their philosophy as a fascistic revisionism. It's neo-Nazi. I said this last week, I think, but if I see the word neo-Nazi one more time on my Instagram feed, I'm gonna jump off a cliff, okay? Because the insinuation that everybody to the right of center is somehow this reactionary beast, which is not capable of actually dialoguing with what is right and what is good. It strikes me as some type of secular religious fundamentalism. That anything outside of this extreme leftism or this extreme progressivism is somehow outside of it. And that's why you see the lefts being so prone to turn on themselves, because the left views deviations with such vigor that even if somebody in the Democratic Party says something that's a little bit too nice about Charlie Kirk's memory, well, that person must also be a reactionary. So that's the type of philosophy you are going up with against when you're dealing with the right. These are people who are so warped in their in their mentality that it's very, very difficult to reason with them. And I think that's why when you see these videos of Charlie Kirk show some compassion to somebody who perhaps is trans, who perhaps is gay, the left actually hates that more than if Charlie Kirk actually viewed them with hostility, because the left has this idea in their mind, because they have this perception of Charlie or people on the right that they're going to call gay people names or trans people names or what have you. So it's through compassion that you actually end up. I'm going to use the term checkmate. You're going to checkmate the liberals, guys, if you use compassion towards these people, because their whole worldview is anti-compassion.
And listen, when I ran the Palatine Republican organization years ago, back before this was even a thing that was in the news, we had a trans individual who came to every meeting, and they were. This was before pronouns and everything else. They were conservative and they came to the meetings, and I've got photos of them sitting next to Tom Morrison talking politics. Like, nobody disrespected them. Nobody treated them horribly. They were welcomed with open arms, but that's not the picture that is given of conservatives, of Republicans. We are treated as these awful humans who supposedly hate so many people. And yet I grew up in churches where we welcomed people with open arms who were different than us, who were maybe facing challenges or approach things different than we did, weren't wearing a suit. Like, we're like, come on in, come sit down next to me. And that's my experience. And I've known a lot of Christians, I've known a lot of Republicans, I've known a lot of conservatives around the country. This is what I do, is talk to people like that on a daily basis. And I can count on maybe a couple hands the number of people that were really, truly, actually hate-filled, like we're all supposed to be. Most people are some of the kindest people you'd ever meet, but that's just not how any of us are portrayed.
Well, and I think there's a lot of people on both sides that, they don't always operate in good faith, right? And they're looking for opportunities to, take somebody out of context or make them look bad. And it's like, if you come across a quote on social media or a 30-second clip of someone speaking and it like doesn't pass the smell test, like, man, this doesn't really make sense to me. Like, why would they say that? I mean, sometimes people do say stupid things and they should be called out for it. But you have to be willing to put in the effort to, well, let me Google this, let me look into it, let me see if this is really what that person said. Because I think you kind of have people that are in, there's people that aren't operating in good faith, they're operating in bad faith, and they're putting these quotes out there into, social media, into the universe, because they have bad intentions. And then you have some people, I would put reporters in the category where some of them are just lazy and they're not going to look into it to see if, oh, well, is this really what the full context? What did he mean by this? I mean, that's why you get articles like that in the New York Times, because they're
especially when it fits their worldview, when it's what they already assume to be true. They see it and they go, oh yeah, of course this is true. Like, and it is more laziness than it is, necessarily evil that they're doing, but some people do it on purpose, and it's problematic. But Michael, I took your advice this week. I want to point to a story because the Sun-Times ran a story that made me go, oof. So they ran a story that right-wing internet personality Ben Bergquam on Thursday filmed outside of J.B. Pritzker's home and invited his followers to take action after the murder of Charlie Kirk on Wednesday, sparking concerns for the Democratic governor's safety. I read that and I was like, come on, guys, don't do that. We can be better. But I was like, you know what? Let me check into it. So I actually clicked through and actually watched the video, which, of course, in the article, Pritzker's people and the state police and Welsh and Harmon and others are like, this is awful. This is horrible. Conservatives are the worst. Look, see, they want violence. So I was like, ugh, come on. Why'd you have to do this? So I went and watched the video myself. And here's what he said in the video. It was like 2 minutes long. He pointed out that Pritzker had private security and is protected in his mansion, and yet still Pritzker's blaming Trump and Charlie Kirk for all this violence that he, in his words, is the direct result of leftist Democrat policies. Okay, so far not inciting violence. His point, which he said later, is he's protected while the inner city is killing itself. Again, okay, not necessarily an inaccurate point. And then as he's talking, he sees the security and the law enforcement. He literally says this: God bless these guys. We appreciate law enforcement. They're just doing their jobs. So again, not inciting violence and actually supporting law enforcement and being law abiding. And then as he's walking away, he says, it's people like that that need to be defeated. Ideas like that need to be defeated. Again, not inciting violence, talking about politics. And here's where they said he incited violence. I'll read it for you. Literally at the end of the video, he's no longer in front of Pritzker's home, which I think is important. He's down the street. This is what he says that supposedly incites violence. He said, God bless Charlie Kirk's family. If you're not inspired now, I don't know what it's going to take. Better get up, better get active. We've got a country to save. The Sun-Times took that and said he called his followers to take action, and that was inciting violence. Watch it for yourself. I mean, literally, this is what's happening right now. And I know it's the Sun-Times. Of course, they're going to do this. They're far, far left. But this is the crap that drives me crazy. Yes, we do have idiots on our side of the aisle who say dumb stuff. But I watched this video for myself, and nothing in there was inappropriate. Nothing in there was inciting violence. But that's what this whole long article is, talking about how horrible conservatives are and we're inciting violence against Pritzker. Meanwhile, Pritzker insinuates very, 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 very strongly that we're all Nazis, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's why, like, as Republicans, like, we need to. There's a lot of great reporters out there that do good work at a number of, these institutions. And whenever you have an opportunity, you feel like, okay, I need to send this press release out. I need to get my message out. Like, maybe give those guys like first bite at the apple, because if some reporter that has bad intentions gets that, puts a spin on it, other reporters are going to copy and paste that, and it's like a game of telephone at the end of the day. Like, what, the quote's not right, it gets butchered, there's bad intentions, and just watch out for those guys, because some of them can't be trusted.
All right, let me move us to our next topic. We've done a lot of other stuff, but we're here for politics. Let's get into politics here with what time we have left. Let's talk about the governor's race. I want to make sure I say this clearly, because we always try to be objective in our podcast. Last week, we had somebody from Ted Dabrowski's Inner Circle on the podcast. He was an awesome guest. Thanks, Mark Glennon, for being with us. It was great to have him. We felt it was only fair to make the same offer to the Bailey Del Mar team, to say, if you've got somebody from your Inner Circle that you think would be a great guest. They suggested David. David, we're glad to have you. Obviously, you're going to have your opinion on this race that will, I assume, support the candidate that you like the most, and that's okay. This is an open forum, but I do want to make sure we just at least tell our audience that that's the case. Is that a fair assessment there?
Well, the fact that they thought I'd be a great surrogate is pretty impressive, because I don't believe that. But I'd love to. I'd love to continue to carry on the conversation, because ultimately, as I said in the introduction, it's not about me. It's really about the future of Illinois, the future leaders such as you guys are in that generation, the young Republicans in the state of Illinois, building a bench, who is going to be on the bench, where we don't have a situation where we find ourselves trying to parse with candidates as who's going to run statewide for comptroller, treasurer, lieutenant governor, the list goes on. Instead, we are looking from a federal standpoint right now. There's no question what's going to happen in 2028 at the federal level. We see the lineup, right? Marco Rubio, J.D. Vance, Vivek Ramaswamy, Don Jr. There's a deep bench. And unfortunately, I'd like to get there. We don't have that in Illinois.
Well, let's talk about the governor's race. I think it's a great kickoff. Thanks for that, David. Let's talk about the gov race in the last week. As Mark promised on Friday, Ted did announce his campaign for governor. So, Chris, you no longer have to have him as your clown of the week. He's finally officially announced.
Don't speak so soon, Collin. I may have him as clown of the week for other reasons. It just won't be because he took a million years to announce he was running.
All right. Well, let's see. But we finally do have a serious candidate who's officially announced for this race. Word is that a Bailey Del Mar announcement's coming soon, maybe a week from now. Let's see. But at the moment, we've got a serious candidate in this race. Finally, officially, Ted Dabrowski is in. He's announced his running mate. It's not somebody that most, if anybody, really knows, which is Dr. Kerry Mendoza, is officially his running mate. Open it up. What do you guys think? Let's keep it fair. And David, I'll have you go last if you don't mind. Let's let the other people give their thoughts, and then you can feel free to share whatever thoughts you have.
I think it's extremely hard, and I mean, we saw it last cycle as well, to get somebody that is like a high quality lieutenant governor candidate, because how do you get somebody to, commit this far out to be part of a ticket? I mean, we don't even do that for president, right? They decide after the election, after the primary, but unfortunately, that's the process that we're stuck with. And we'll see what Mendoza is made of, right? I mean, maybe she'll surprise us all. Maybe she's a good speaker, a good campaigner, etc. It's up to her to prove it.
We can thank Scott Lee Cohen for that reality of having to pick our light gov so early. But
Yeah.
You're right. It does force probably a lower quality candidate on average than if these candidates could win the nomination and then choose their lieutenant governor. We might get higher quality light govs, but who knows? It's certainly an interesting thought.
I mean, look at the quality of Pritzker's lieutenant governor candidate. I mean, the names that we're hearing on our side from the three main contenders. I mean, I would rather have them any day than somebody that has a questionable background.
What else you guys got?
Listen, as someone who's a statewide candidate for all of about 30 seconds, I understand the plight of people who are looking at announcing for a statewide office and getting all of your ducks in a row, lining up your campaign team, lining up some nice key early supporters and endorsements. But here's the thing, Ted. We knew that Ted Dabrowski was looking at running for governor for basically the last 3-4 months, Collin, about that.
Yeah.
The fact that it took about 3-4 months, and apparently they found a light gov at like the last possible second. That's what the word on the street is. That they found that it was very hard for them to find a lieutenant governor. Okay, it shouldn't take you this long to put together a campaign team. And if it does take you this long, you need to start doing this on the front end. So you can announce, let's say Ted Dabrowski announced he was running for governor in like July, okay? Middle of summer, kind of slow for the news. But Ted Dabrowski announced he's running for governor. He starts going to some GOP meetings, some summer barbecues, things like that. He's got this race in the bag, more or less. Yeah, he'd have to run against Jim Mendrick, but, I think he probably could have beaten Jim Mendrick in all honesty. But because Ted waited this long, we are still in the reality that once Darren Bailey and Aaron Del Mar announced next week, and now we're going to be playing a wait game on those guys, but I do know they have their petitions out there, so they're at least ahead of it in that regard. Now Ted Dabrowski's kind of like, he's still a who, because the average Illinoisan doesn't know who Ted Dabrowski is. I barely knew who Ted Dabrowski was before he showed up at the Southwest Cook GOP meeting and lectured us about state finances for an hour and a half, okay? So if you're Ted Dabrowski, yeah, you just raised 2 million clams, and good for you, my brother.
Is it 2? It's at 1. Was there more that I missed today?
I thought it was like 1.9 or something.
No, it's like it's just over 1, which is solid, but it's not 2. So let's just.
I think there was more that came in like the day after he announced or something. I'm pretty sure.
Okay,
but either way, let's call it 1. You raised 1 million clams, my guy. Good work. But now, how much of that money are you going to have to spend just to raise your name ID amongst John Q. Republican in the suburbs? That's the real big problem here. I think there was an over-reliance on the fact that Ted Dabrowski thought he was going to get a lot of institutional support from the party. Seems like he might get some of it, judging from some of the people who are on his campaign committee. But I think there was an over-reliance on that, and I struggle to see how fast Ted Dabrowski is going to get on the ballot while also raising his name ID with the average Republican and outwork Darren Bailey and Aaron Del Mar in traversing the state with a running mate that nobody knows, nobody's ever heard of, and whose credentials seem questionable at the very least. I've heard some people talk about her credentials. So either way, listen, Ted Dabrowski, he might be the best candidate in the race right now. He might be the best candidate in general. Everybody on this podcast, other than David Paul Blumenshine, might end up voting for Ted Dabrowski at the end of the day. I can't speak for the others. I can only speak for what I perceive. But at the end of the day, this is not a riveting launch. It just isn't. Ted Dabrowski, like Butler said about his like gov, is going to have to prove to us that he is capable of beating both Darren Bailey in a primary and be a reasonable nominee in the general election. That is yet to be proven. We've got a long way to go. But once again, because of the nature of petition season, the clock is ticking.
Chelsie, you've been trying to jump in. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was laughing a lot at what Chris was saying.
We all do that a lot.
We do. Maybe he is bringing the sunshine today,
Yes,
as the sun keeps beating down on me. You're making me
compared
laugh.
to what I've heard over the last week about how awful of a person I am, because I was, a little bit of a little mean to Ted. I think people do think, apparently, Chris, you're the sunshine and I'm the dark cloud one. I don't know.
Yeah, I know that right away, as soon as Ted's running mate was announced, everybody had to look up who is she, and I know right away Cap Facts went to she has 80-20 views on transgenderism from what I can see. Kids shouldn't be transitioning. I didn't look too much into it. I definitely think it's an uphill road. Can anybody remember offhand the Illinois Review statistics on name ID or the polling?
I've got the poll right here. I was going to bring it up later, but you're my guest, so you get to put us out of order if you want.
I'm so sorry.
Don't apologize. You're good. It said Bailey at 31, Mendrick at 5, Dabrowski at 3, another candidate at 6, unsure at 55. So basically, if you're just comparing Bailey to Dabrowski, 31-3 in that poll.
With 55 still undecided.
Yeah. So plenty of space to move, but as Chris said, you got to catch up before you can get to the lead.
Yeah, there's a lot of headwinds in the way.
Listen, for the Light Gov choice, from what I've been told, from those who have heard her speak, she is a good speaker and she has a lot of potential. That's what I've been told. I've never heard her speak. All I know is what I Googled as soon as I found out who it was Thursday night. And I'm up in Wisconsin, trying to see who the heck is this person. And while Chelsie, you may say that she's on the 80% side of 80-20 issues. The problem is that she's on the 80% side if you actually explain your position.
Do the research. If you actually don't go for the headline.
To the average voter, especially in a state like Illinois, she's going
to be another Charlie Kirk.
She's comes to this race with some liabilities in a general election that could hurt that ticket. And so my question then became, what is she bringing to the ticket? I know there was troubles finding a Light Gov in this situation, and I respect that. But what are you bringing then to the ticket? I thought, because before I saw everything Friday with the announcement, Thursday night I saw her and I'm like, okay, well, Dan Proft loves talking crime. Crime is a hot button issue in certain areas. Maybe they're putting her on this because she's an emergency room doctor. And while that actually could be kind of cool, maybe Proft is smarter than all of us. Maybe he outsmarted all of us here, and she can give a firsthand account of how bad crime is, and there could be something here. And then I see the whole rollout, and there's nothing about crime. There's nothing about her background on crime. All their issues are not really using that aspect of her other than her photo on the website. So maybe that's their plan down the road. And if so, that could be a little bit cool. In the meantime, though, again, the point is you've got liabilities here that she's going to bring to the general election. She doesn't help you win the primary. So it just may end up being a Dan Proft special where he outthinks himself. But at the end of the day, from what I've heard, she has potential, so I'm going to give her the benefit of the doubt and give her a chance here. But on all the text threads and email threads and channels and chats that I'm on, there was nothing but who is this? And after they Googled her, seriously, this is where they ended up. So there are definitely some concerns.
Well, I think that points back to David Paul's thing of where's the bench in Illinois? There is no bench. I know that there were talks with many people to try to get the LT, and they all went nowhere because nobody wants to run in Republican circles because you're going to lose.
Well, there was one very prominent person who was like, I'll be Light Gov, and they told her no. So I don't really know what the calculus was there.
Yeah, and I can simply say this, having spent a lot of time trying to recruit statewide candidates, I found a number of people who were willing to step up as lieutenant governor. And so while I do respect it's difficult, Chelsie, you're not wrong. And obviously we've all heard the rumors. We don't have proof, but we've heard the rumors that the campaign did struggle with that. I respect that. But I had at least a dozen names who were all willing to step up as Light Gov with a real ticket, who showed potential and could raise money and could win, which is potentially what Dabrowski is here. So this idea that there was nobody is not.
So then what's broken in our system that they weren't given a fair shake? Were they?
From what we've been told, the campaign was trying to keep everybody happy. That we had to keep, this group happy and this group happy and this individual happy, and she doesn't like him and he doesn't like her, so we can't pick this person. And at the end of the day, you're left with a list of nobody because every time you bring up a name, someone in the inner circle said, "No, they're horrible."
So we're forgetting that politics is about coalition building.
Correct. It was that inability to say, you know what, we may not agree on everything, but let's come together. If you truly want to build a team of rivals, which is what I've heard from a few people that Ted is trying to create, then you actually have to have rivals. But if it's the idea that we're going to create a team of rivals, but only of people who, a few key people like personally, that's not a team of rivals.
The one thing I think that's like just in this context, but also generally, like you cannot, as Republicans, we cannot let perfect be the enemy of good. Like sometimes there are people that are like good enough. Like, yeah, it's not like this rock star and they're the best candidate Illinois has ever seen and they're running for state rep and I'm so excited. But it's like, okay, well, it's a competitive race. These are the things that they bring to the table. Like, we're going to have to get behind that person, give it our all, because that person is going to be better than what we are currently dealing with. And I think that's true of Darren. I think that's true of Dabrowski. I think that's true of Mendrick. These guys are going to have to get out there and make that case, though. And so far, Michael, I mean, it's early, but they haven't.
And Michael, you mentioned what we have to face. I mean, just take one look at that Tribune article on Dabrowski and his announcement. Announcing bid for governor, Ted Dabrowski leaves more questions than answers. And it is literally one of the most slanted and awful articles I've seen from the Tribune. I mean, they literally just paragraph after paragraph rip them to shreds. There's no fairness here. There's no other side here. I mean, even as somebody who myself has pointed to some flaws in the campaign, this is ridiculous. And this is what we face. The Tribune is the most friendly outlet for us as Republicans. So I do think there needs to be some understanding here that at the end of the day, we are going to have to come together because our opposition in this state is deep and it is entrenched. Some of us are going to push hard until we get to that point. As Chris said, as Michael said, you're going to have to prove to us you can go out there and win because the stakes are massive. J.B. Pritzker cannot be given another term. These are massive stakes. So I'm sorry if I hurt your feelings by holding these candidates to a high standard because you know what? If they can't handle me and my little Facebook or Twitter post that was meant to be funny and wasn't that big of a deal, if that hurts your feelings and makes you cry into a tissue, then you're not ready for a candidate for governor against J.B. Pritzker to take back this state. I'm not going to apologize for that. I'm going to push you to be better. And if you can't take it, then get the hell out of the way for those of us who can take this fight. So you know what? You look at that Tribune article and tell me that this is not going to be the fight of our lives. Even the Tribune is going to rip our candidates to shreds. It was inappropriate. It was unacceptable, but it's the reality. That's what we have to face here in this election. All right, David, thank you for being patient. You actually been super fair and balanced in this podcast. So maybe you won't be a shill for Bailey, as some people said, but you know what? You have a right to your opinion. What are your thoughts on this governor's race?
Did Aaron say that? Did Aaron say
Aaron didn't say it. Yeah, no.
Okay. Well, thanks, Collin. I mean, obviously, I think we all can say that we are Charlie Kirk. I am Charlie Kirk, especially our native. He's a native son of Illinois. I guess my observations, my pastor from the Tabernacle Church just did a message this past Sunday called The 7 Observations of Charlie Kirk's Life. And one of the things that we all can agree on as Charlie has raised up Turning Point USA is this. Charlie Kirk and the acolytes that are going along with Charlie Kirk are the future of our country. So with Ted Dabrowski, I like Ted. Ted was on the DPB show. I've always enjoyed the content that he's put forward in Wire Points. I think there's very few people that are as astute as Ted is when it comes to dissecting a lot of the issues that we face here as, as our state. And so I'm just perplexed by Ted. It's rumored that Ted wanted to do this a year and a half ago. And if that's the case, I mean, it's not 4 months back now, it's a year and a half, then why wasn't there more of a concerted effort on raising the awareness of Ted Dabrowski, especially on his social media pages? Why didn't he boost and why didn't he come out running? I go back to when Darren decided to run the first time around. We knew well ahead of time. In fact, I helped him host an event to launch, a year plus ahead of the primary. And I guess that's kind of my feelings on it. And as far as his lieutenant governor selection, Chelsie is correct. She might be a delightful person who is eloquent, can walk around the issues, and can, address, some of the problems that we face here in Illinois. But at the end of the day, whether it's Jim or whether it's Ted or whether it's Joe, can I say that? Because I know that he's still thinking about it. Or Darren, the biggest problem we're going to face moving away from the primary, unquestionably, there will be somebody that comes out of that primary. I do believe it's going to be Darren. There's a deficiency of about 700,000 votes that are out there. And we know, based on the data, that unreliable voters in Illinois, we have enough people. That was proven in the general election with Trump. It's very rare that we ever breach 2 million votes. I think it will be a success, whether we win the general election or not, if we can break 2 million votes. And I think that's what I want to hear from every candidate is how are we going to mobilize and fortify the counties first, that we know that we can raise up more ballots and votes out of, but then mobilize, having a team. And unfortunately, we don't have the money that Pritzker has. So we're going to have to seek out people who are willing to go out and truly chase and harvest ballots. I mean, that's the only way we're going to move the needle, and and have hope that we're doing things to come together to create coalitions. I think the death of Charlie Kirk hopefully can get all Republicans to realize that what's truly important, and that's God, family, in this state of Illinois, and hard work.
Well, I appreciate your thoughts on that, and I think no one can complain there. That you were incredibly fair. I think that's what I would hope they would say about our podcast too, because I think Chris and I maybe said a couple things about Ted in the last podcast that could be considered not favorable. And I said to them when people complained about it, I'm like, did you not watch the 2 weeks prior where we were frankly very mean to Darren Bailey and going after some of the things we disagreed with him on? Like, this isn't about Ted. This isn't about Darren. It's not about Mendrick or anybody else who might be still sniffing that race. What it's about is making sure we have a nominee who can actually win in the general election. That's what we need. We need the strongest possible candidate. And there are many people. Listen, I mentioned all the different threads I'm on and different conversations I'm in. This isn't just what I'm hearing from me. This is texts I'm getting. After the announcement, based on everything I saw and what I heard from a whole number of people, there were not one. I know I posted on social media one funny one that I figured, let's have some fun with this. This is kind of funny. And some people freaked out. There were 20 mistakes made by the Dabrowski campaign in the rollout. And this is what scares us about if he is. We're being told by many people in the party that, Ted is our best hope. And, for those of us who are a little wary of Darren, that I know we've been told that he's grown, but we haven't seen it yet. If he shows that he has, I will be the first to eat crow, but we've been told that he's grown and we haven't seen it. So we're nervous because the Darren of the past wouldn't necessarily be the best choice for the Republican Party. So we're looking to Ted, and we've got high hopes for Ted. And you see the mistakes in the rollout. You see the mistakes in the campaign. I'm going to run through these for two reasons. One, because those on social media who said I was being mean to Ted by pointing to one small thing, fine, I'll give you the full list. Like, I'm not going to post this on social media because I'm not looking to hurt Ted. My reach on social media is way bigger than my reach on this little podcast. So I'm not going to post this on social media. But I think for our audience, we need to be aware of what we're talking about. This isn't me or Chris or Michael nitpicking. This was from start to finish a failed rollout. Let me just give you the list, and then you decide if I'm being too mean. And by the way, I'm keeping out on this list all the ticky-tack stuff, the minor stuff, things that only people like me will ever notice. Focus more on the bigger things here in terms of what were mistakes in that rollout. First of all, it was done on a Friday. Everybody knows Friday is the day you dump out the trash if you don't want anybody to pay attention to the news. You never do something like this on a Friday. The press release was sent too late, where as a result, People had that 9-minute speech to pull their quotes from when what you're supposed to do is put the press release out so you can hyper focus on the quotes you want them to run with. That was a key PR error that they should have known better. There was no announcement piece on social media, no post, nothing to post this on social media. I think David mentioned this. It was a total wasted opportunity to get his name out there when he needs name recognition. Let's talk about the event. The optics were bad. You did it in front of his home, which is a $2+ million home. It's hard to say you're the party of the working families when you're standing in front of a $2+ million house. The optics weren't great. There was, for some reason, some staffer standing directly behind and above him. So she shows up in all of the media shots just randomly while Ted is speaking. Just, again, dumb things. You should know better than this. He stood on the steps to try to make himself look taller, and yet he's standing next to Jason Plummer, who makes me look tiny. So the optics there aren't great for Ted. It just clearly they were thinking about his height. That's why they had him standing on steps, but they still didn't think to maybe have Jason move a little bit further away. They didn't take media questions after the announcement, which I get it. They hate the media. The media wasn't going to treat them well, but still it just invited the media to treat them badly. And if you can't handle the media, are you really ready to be governor and take on JB Pritzker? We've talked about his lieutenant governor choice, unknown lieutenant governor. Didn't let her speak at the announcement, even though his mother spoke. That was pretty weird. The headshot of her on his website is like a Facebook selfie. It's not even like an actual photo. Let's go to the launch video. They rolled out this launch video just quietly on a Sunday on YouTube. No promotions, no posts. 3 days later, it had 193 views. That's your announcement video for running for governor. It was over 6 minutes long, which anybody will tell you is way too long in this business. They didn't even talk about Illinois until over 80 seconds in. It didn't have the required disclosure text at the end, so it's even illegal. Whatever. Hey, nobody in the campaign even knows that rule, apparently. And some more trivial stuff. They had to change the committee name after 3 weeks. I don't know why they didn't just get it right the first time. I talked about this on social media. The background photo they use on pretty much everything is a fake AI image of Springfield. Apparently, nobody on their team spends enough time on Springfield to know that that's not actually our capital in this state. On the Facebook page, the intro has just a random paragraph break. Nobody apparently paid attention to that. The campaign signs use the federal disclaimer instead of the state disclaimer. They're running on 5 issues, even though everyone says in this business it's always 3, but of course they know better. It's 5 for them. The donation page on the website, when you click on it, it has the federal campaign fundraising limits, not the state limits. And oh, by the way, it's the federal limits from last cycle. It's not even the federal limits from this cycle. And oh, by the way, he's busted the cap, so there isn't actually limits, so you could put whatever numbers you want on there. Yes, these are ticky-tack things. These are dumb things. But like, these are the things we're watching to say, is he going to be ready to take on Pritzker when they can't even do the basics and the little stuff right? And I've gotten, last one here, multiple reports from the field that there were events this week, and literally none of them had Dabrowski petitions being passed. So they weren't ready to get the petitions out far and wide across the state immediately when they announced. Most of these are very little things. But here's the deal. If we are putting our hopes in a candidate to go defeat JB Pritzker, who is a good campaigner with lots and lots of money, you got to be able to prove to us you can run a good campaign. And that's 20 errors in one rollout in 1, 3, 4, 5 day span. That is not going to cut it. So for those who are saying I'm being too mean to Ted, I posted one error and I did it in a joke on social media. I'm not going after the guy, but you need to be aware there's way more here that I am biting my tongue week after week after week. I'm trying my best to be nice to these candidates because one of them is going to be our nominee. But along the way, we got to push them to be better. Enthusiasm does not win elections. You need to actually have some competence and actually run a strong campaign. We've got this group in our party who's like, well, it's just rah-rah and unity and everyone just cheer for everybody. And I get it. I appreciate that. That's like my wife being an optimist and I love her for it. But the reality is we have decades of losing in this state. So just cheering rah-rah is not going to win us an election. We've got to actually go out and do something to get better. And I have tried. There was a good friend of mine on social media who said, well, why don't you pass this on to the campaigns privately? And I'll tell them, I have tried. I have tried over the years to provide polling data to the candidates and to the party, advice to them, not even from me, from people way smarter than me. We had tens of thousands of dollars of research that we did in this last election that we offered to the party for free, no interest at all in taking advantage of that. We do trainings, and then we get yelled at for doing trainings because that's the party's job. I'm paying for these things out of my pocket, and the party's fighting us instead of sending people to it. In other states, it's the party who's putting the trainings on and telling their people, you must go because we've got to get smarter. I was just up in Wisconsin where Republicans are actually winning, and the state party chair was there, and they were requiring their staff to go and get smarter and get trained, even though they actually win some races up there, unlike us. Charlie Kirk said, learn something new every day. Yet we in Illinois, it's always like, oh, I can't believe it. Like, how did we lose? And then we go do the same things that we just did time after time after time that led to us losing. Maybe, just maybe, we should start to try to get better. And that's what I try to accomplish in these podcasts. That's what I try to push our candidates to do. If they were willing to listen privately, I wouldn't do it here. But if you're going to refuse to listen privately, I'm going to use my bully pulpit to try to force this party to get better because I am sick of losing in this state. I don't do politics to lose, and we get to win in other states. It's great. We're not just Illinois anymore, and it's fun to win in other states, but we want to win in our home state. But Republicans in this state seem to like to lose and refuse to get better. So yes, I'm going to use my bully pulpit to force this party to improve, because you're not going to come willingly to the trainings. You're not going to come willingly to listen to other people's opinions. So fine, I'll use my bully pulpit and force you to do it. So there's my rant. I'm sick and tired of the mistakes. Let's run smart campaigns. Let's grow and get better, and let's go beat JB Pritzker.
Look, let me just add one more thing on this topic, Colin, because, if people are saying that maybe I was too hard on Ted Dabrowski in previous weeks, I'll just kind of reword what I said earlier. I want Ted Dabrowski to run a successful campaign. Like, I want Ted Dabrowski to be a kick-ass candidate for governor. As a Polish Illinoisan, our power in the state's politics is reduced to Rob Martwick, so we could do better than that, clearly. And, we need, and listen, I don't, look, cover your ears, David. I don't want Darren Bailey to be the nominee for the Republican Party again, guys. I really freaking don't. It's probably going to end poorly. So if there could be a serious campaign with competent staff who can raise money, get a message out there, I will welcome it hand over fist. And maybe Ted Dabrowski is the Poindexter who can tell the people of the state of Illinois, we're going broke, people. Something's got to change. But in order for something to change, we got to run a good campaign. So yes, I called Ted Dabrowski a dupa 2 weeks ago, and he was the only person who got what I meant by that. But it's not personal. It's not. I don't have it out for Ted Dabrowski. I just want the guy to run a good freaking campaign.
And the reality is right now, I mean, to Bailey's credit, Del Mar and David, I'm sure you'll be happy if this is the outcome. Like, so far, the Dabrowski campaign is proving they're not even to come close to challenging Bailey, let alone being able to beat JB Pritzker. And that's why we're pushing so hard. So again, you don't like it? Well, start your own podcast then. But the reality is it's time we actually try to improve in this state, because sitting around saying how pretty each of us is, and then going and losing elections just ain't working. Maybe, just maybe, we got to get out there and bust our butts, get smarter, get better, and go win some damn elections. Unless you just like losing, which is sort of what a lot of people think the Republicans in the state just like to do.
One of the things I think that you stress, Colin, and my studio where I'm sitting and I do the DPB show, which is right now live, and Mrs. Producer, my beautiful wife, is carrying my load for me, is in the same building where I get an opportunity to go to a leadership institute on campaigns. And the person who led that seminar was yours truly, Collin Corbett of Core Strategies. And I came away from that training and I sought out other trainings. If you don't know what you're doing, the only way that I came to become the state director for election integrity and then to be on calls with Don Tracy, Mark Hosty, Larry Smith, and all of the people, Sean McCabe, on trying to understand election integrity, which by the end of all the meetings I attended, we never got any further than the first meeting that we had. They could have benefited from a Core Strategies, Collin Corbett, Leadership Institute seminar. And the thing is I think that the only way that Bailey shines above all the rest of the candidates right now is I do believe that Darren has learned a lot, because we already have been tested in the fire. And there were a lot of things that we could have done better. I told Darren early on that we needed to look into vote by mail. It wasn't going away. We needed to be about the 40 days of the election season. And we did build out, contrary to what we were up against with Richard Irvin and Gary Rabine and Jesse, we built out a team. And that team didn't go away. We already cover 102 counties. We have 13 regional coordinators. We flipped the switch. And those people didn't go away. I'm not saying we didn't lose a few people. Obviously, people move. But so we had a team already built out. So Darren was positioned. In February of this year is when I started to call Darren and ask him, so what do you think? You know, do you see anybody? Do you hear anybody? Is there anybody out there that we can reach out to? And at the end of the day, I really don't think Darren wanted to enter this race. Darren's very happy on the farm. Darren, and he says this, and he doesn't hide it. If it wasn't for his wife and God, a lot of times he wouldn't be where, you know, he currently is. But he puts so much emphasis on allowing others to speak truth and light into his life that he realized he was in a coup d'etat amongst his friends, that we were pushing him because we would like to see somebody else that would shine for Illinois. And I think that's going to happen. I do believe we are on the precipice of seeing other young people rise up. One of my favorite people that I'd love to see take on a greater role in the state of Illinois is my friend Ty Smith, the modern Renaissance man. I think he would have a powerful impact, especially in the south side of Chicago.
David, before we close this down, can I just ask you a quick question? We've said repeatedly on this podcast that something you just mentioned, that the delay in the party having a candidate is ultimately what led to Darren saying, fine, I'll do it. Like, every report I've gotten from people close to Darren is not that he was angling this for a very long time. As a matter of fact, it was only a few weeks prior to when he started to post where he was like, all right, fine. If y'all don't have a candidate, then I will do it. Are we wrong in that? Because you seem to be more on the inside than any of the rest of us. Is that an incorrect assessment?
No, I you know, Darren's not shy with sharing with me, you know, his heart, where he's at. His heart is in, you know, this state. It's in his family. It's all of those things that he always talks about. And he's willing to serve and say, okay, here, send me. And that's the conversation I had with him before that. I mean, we were hopeful. We were hoping against hope that Chelsie Leffelman would announce her candidacy for governor of Illinois. Or if
it would have been a great choice.
or you know, I find it fascinating because I had to reach out to Dave Smith because, you know, he was concerned about Darren and who his possible running mate would be. And Dave goes, why didn't he choose you for his lieutenant governor? And I'm like, you know, that's the furthest thing from my mind, because I like people like Kevin Ferris, who went to Liberty University from Speechless, who is going to come back, was with Charlie at Turning Point USA. He's going to be a great asset to this state. Kat Peterson of the Conservative Cat Show. I think she could do great things as a representative. I just want to build a bench. I think I'm thankful that I came across the smoke-filled room many years ago, because I do tune in and listen. And the word you used against Darren was juvenile, but that's okay, because Darren didn't take it personally. And neither do I. I'm sure Charlie Kirk was called a lot of names, but you guys are a core group of people, core strategies that can truly lead to more people being involved. That's what I want to see. At the end of the day, I just turned 62 years of age. You know, most of my political career is behind me. But yet I never got into this. In fact, Chelsie, is it okay if I tell our story real quick? Because I know we're at the end of the break. So I only ran for state rep against Dan Brady because Chelsie lived a half mile outside of his district. I sought her out at the 4th of July parade. I met her. I said, God, this gal is fascinating. She could definitely take on Dan Brady. And we met many times and ultimately found out that she was not in the district. But I thought she would be a great state rep candidate. And that was back in 2017.
Interesting. I'm glad you shared it, and I love Chelsie. So I think Chelsie serving as a state legislator at some point in her career would be a boon for Illinois. So no pressure, Chelsie.
Yeah.
All right.
Or governor.
There you go.
2030, Chelsie.
we're going to see what we can get done in the rest of our agenda here. We're almost out of time, but there's a few topics we should definitely cover. I'm going to skip the comptroller race for now. I do want to talk about it, but it's not as timely, so we can hold on that one for now. Let's talk about a couple of these race updates, and then we'll get to our final segments. Talk about Illinois 8th Congressional District. We're recording this Thursday. Supposedly tonight, Jennifer Davis is announcing her candidacy for the 8th District. So she'll be up against Mark Rice in that primary, and then a complete cattle car of candidates on the Democratic side, which now also includes Melissa Bean, which Melissa Bean was considered a moderate back when Democrats actually had some moderates. You can imagine the far left of the party is not really excited about Melissa Bean getting in that primary. I'm not going to lie, watching some of these quotes about her, about them ripping her apart, I don't mind it. I'll be honest, because I spent the early years of my career trying to knock Melissa Bean off and finally succeeded in that. So I don't love seeing her come back, but it's nice to see her own party kind of ripping her apart. Illinois 8th Congressional District's going to be an interesting race. I know Chris and Michael, you guys maybe had a little higher of a feeling on this race, that maybe it was a little more of an opportunity for Republicans even than I did. So you guys have any thoughts on this race quickly on IL 8?
I just want it stated for the record, Collin just took credit for Joe Walsh's entire political career. So any problems you had?
You listen, you can look up the D2s. It was core staffers were part of that team, that we didn't run it, but we were part of the team. Not me, thank God. But I do at our trainings around the country. Actually, I frequently apologize that we had some hand in getting Joe Walsh in office.
Shame. It's all your fault, Collin. Look, listen, I am not high in the 8th Congressional District just because it saw a pretty steep movement towards Trump in the 2024 general. It's a very diverse district. It has Hispanics, it has Asians of a lot of different ethnic backgrounds. So I think that's interesting for the Republican Party, because I think the Republican Party needs those voters to be viable in the long-term future. The problem with the 8th Congressional District is everybody talked about how this was going to be the race when Raja finally moved up to run for Senate or run for governor or whatever Raja was going to do. Here's the problem. All of the air is getting sucked out of the 8th is going into the 9th. Right next door. Like, everybody's
on the Democratic side.
Right, on the Democrat, because everyone's paying attention to the Republican side of the 8th Congressional District, Collin.
I mean, it is the point of this podcast, but carry on.
But, so the 8th hasn't gotten as much publicity as it probably should, because of all of the seats that are open right now, the 8th is the one that's actually kind of, sort of, maybe, who knows, in play. So I'm glad that we're talking about it a little bit, because as of right now, the media isn't, or nobody's really paying attention.
Yeah, I mean, listen, we talked about it on our special episode. Trump only lost the 8th by a little bit under 7 points. I mean, the baseline is still D10. Let's be real here. It is still a Democratic district, but Trump overperformed. It's an open seat now. There's a lot of people who are contacting us regularly who are really high on Jennifer Davis. Obviously, we saw Mark Rice a lot down at the state fair. He feels very confident in his chances. We've said some not so favorable things about Mark in the past. I'll leave it alone for this podcast, but I think there's a high hope that whoever comes out of that primary, which at the moment Jennifer looks like she has a good amount of potential, whoever could come out of that primary could make it a real race. Because if Chris is right, that's a district that at minimum we can overperform, let alone maybe make a run for it. And if you overperform in all these districts, that helps the party up and down the ballot. It's good for the party. So that's what we've got to hope for. All right, Michael, you're in and out, so I'm going to move us on to the next topic. Sorry if you had thoughts on this race, but I got to keep us moving. So let's go to the next topic here. I think we've mentioned it on the podcast, but we haven't actually given her a full topic, and she deserves it, so we're going to do it here. Illinois, our buddy Patrick Finkson has said that Gabby Shanahan is passing petitions for another challenge to Harry Benton in House District 97. Again, we've mentioned it before, so it's not necessarily news, but I do want to give kudos to Gabby. We said repeatedly last cycle that even though we may have disagreed with the Republican strategy to invest so heavily in the race, we really like Gabby Shanahan. She is absolutely a bright light for the party, and it's awesome to see her run a second time. Oftentimes, candidates, especially for legislative races, may not win the first time, but then they're able to build on that and do better the second time. So hopes are really high for Gabby in this race. I give her a lot of praise for running again, even though obviously the last race was hard and she's got young kids. There's a lot she's, of course, got to do in her life. So the fact that she's willing to make the sacrifice a second time, I say thank you to her. And I really hope we can continue to push the needle and what do you say? Push the ball forward a bit, even more in House District 97. Harry Benton is not the moderate he pretends to be, so I'd love to see some movement in this district.
Well, and
Yeah,
also I think the fact that, Harry Benton ran for township office and has a whole nother full-time government job on top of, being a state rep, which is, technically part-time. But I think there's some things you can use there that will be good. So we'll see what they can make of it.
Yeah, and the House Republican spokesperson said that, Michael, in their quote. They talked about how Benton's another double-dipping politician, making a fortune in the backs of local taxpayers while families struggle against high prices. Great line. They continued on and added, of course, a whole bunch of issues, but that line specifically, if they use that over and over, it's going to be real impactful because I've seen it on both sides of the aisle. Voters do not like double-dipping politicians. It's part of what we used against Susana Mendoza for Leslie Munger's campaign that worked so effectively to make Munger one of the highest vote getters statewide that we've had in the last decade. It was using that double dipping very effectively. So this could be a great attack on Harry Benton.
it would actually turn up in polling that comment, like that, the double dipping issue, because my perception is that voters don't really care.
If you use it effectively, it turns up. If you just sort of spew some words and don't actually give it the time of day and give it the visuals and really hammer it home, no, it doesn't move the needle. But if you really do it effectively, yes, it moves votes.
Because my perception is like when you say, "Hey, Harry Benton's also highway commissioner," and they're like, "Oh,
it's
cool.
not that. It's
Harry
the double
Benton's
dip.
highway commissioner."
It's not that. It's the double dipping of the pensions and the taxpayer paid salaries. So it's not about the positions themselves. It's the taxpayer funded pension and salary. That's what works.
Interesting. See, once again, guys, we're learning things. Even the political expert Chris Jackowiak just learned something about polling on this issue.
Hey, we used it in a county board race in Madison County, in 2024 that we were working on, and we beat the Democrat for.
Yeah.
That was one of the things we used.
Chelsea keeps trying to jump in. Go ahead, Chelsea.
Yeah, one of the things that I love about Gabby is she's just such a hard worker, and she's one of those ones where she's going to take what she learned on that first campaign, and she's not going to double down. She's actually going to make the necessary adjustments that she needs to make in order to perform better and hopefully, overtake that seat. Flip it.
Yep. I like it. All right, let's move on to the next one here. Michael, quickly, can you just tell us about House District 18? From what I'm hearing, and I obviously live nowhere near that district, this is going to be one of the most packed ballots in the whole state of Illinois, other than maybe the Dem primary in aisle 9. What's going on there in Paul Jacobs' seat that he's vacating to run for or take over as senator there?
Yeah, so there's at least 5 candidates that I'm aware of that are circulating petitions in this district. Brandon Gibbs, he's a police officer in Carbondale. Dayton Lloyd, who is actually Joshua Lloyd's father, lives in that district. He's running. Joe DeBose, who was, a comms guy for the Bailey campaign, multiple cycles, including in the governor's race. Harold Visser, who kind of got involved because of some of the homeschooling issues that were going on in Springfield with that legislation. Him and his wife, they homeschooled their kids, so that's kind of what brought him into the mix. And then Scott Duty, who is, had a radio show for a number of years down there in that kind of Union Jackson County area that was very well received. It was called the Working Man's show that was on like during the lunch break. So it seems like from what I'm hearing from people that Scott Duty and Joe DeBose are basically the 2 main candidates. Some of these other guys may really step up and make a name for themselves, but that's what we're looking at right now. So it definitely will be an interesting primary.
Okay, we got big shoes to fill, trying to take over Paul Jacobs' seat. So let's see who rises to the occasion.
Absolutely.
All right, moving along here. This is just a quick one. Maybe we'll get Chris's quick thoughts, and then we'll move to our final segments. But Joseph Johnson's going to challenge Marty Moylan in House District 55. And for those who watched our ridiculously long 3-hour special episode where we talked about different districts that might be in play, might not be in play, we briefly talked about Marty Moylan. We said it was a cut district, but we said there's a really interesting thing. Trump only lost that district by 6.6%. It's a D12 district overall, and that's usually how it plays. But it was a shocking number when we were looking at some of these districts, how massively Trump overperformed in that district. So we're not saying that this individual, who I don't know Joseph Johnson at all, we're not saying this individual is going to win this district, but Trump performing by so much, Republicans need to build on that. So I love to see that we've got a candidate in the race. Chris, any quick thoughts on it?
Look, at the risk of getting into another debate with you, this is what the philosophy needs to be for the district. You run a candidate, throw him a couple bucks, see what happens, and see where it actually performs against Marty Moylan after you see a result like that. You take the result you got, see where you improved, see where you could have see where you improved your numbers, see where you might have lost some ground from Trump, and then take it from there from future cycles. You're not going to win this race this cycle. Just not going to happen. But what could happen is you could build on it for future cycles.
This is the long-term viewpoint that as strategists, we hope the party could start to do instead of just always looking right at the tip of their nose. You got to think long-term. And in this district, we could learn a lot in this race. It's worth keeping an eye on. All right, we've only got a couple quick hits this week, and then we'll let our guests give their clowns and OGs and final thoughts. There's just two this week on quick hits, but they're things you should be aware of if you are involved in politics in Illinois on the Republican side. First thing here is that we've talked about the problems at the Department of Corrections under J.B. Pritzker because the left continues to try to convince us that J.B. Pritzker is some great administrator of the state of Illinois, yet every week we have examples of how untrue that is. And yet again this week, there's another example. Now at women's prisons, where female prisoners are alleging widespread abuse and retaliation at these IDOC facilities in multiple complaints. And if you read some of these stories of sexual assault and harassment and grooming and just some awful things being done by mostly male staff at these prisons. I know that we'll talk to some people like Terry Bryant and others who, of course, there are a lot of great Department of Corrections employees. The point here is not to go after them, but there's always some rotten apples that could ruin the whole bunch. And it seems like in J.B. Pritzker's Illinois at the Department of Corrections, there's a good amount of rotten apples that something needs to be done about. And J.B. Pritzker, of course, is doing nothing. One of these Logan correctional facility, and I'm trying to get all the details here as I'm talking, which is harder than it may seem, by the way, when you're doing these podcasts. But since 2021 in Logan, there have been 223 complaints under the Prison Rape Elimination Act, according to these lawsuits, of which only 6% were substantiated. So the question is how much were accurate or how much were just shoved under the rug or pushed under the rug. But 85 of those were allegations of sexual abuse by staff against people in custody. I mean, there are gross things happening in Illinois in our prisons and in the way that we treat people in this state by the government under J.B. Pritzker, whether it's these female prisons, whether it's youth prisons where now over 900 young people are saying they were sexually abused, whether it's at DCFS, we are seeing failure after failure in the state of Illinois under J.B. Pritzker, and these are at a whole different level. This isn't just, we wasted a few tax dollars. These are people's lives who are being ruined, and J.B. Pritzker doesn't seem to give a crap about it. So we as Republicans need to be shining a spotlight on this because we could talk taxes and everything else, but you know what? You want to show to the voters of the state that J.B. Pritzker doesn't deserve another term. Show how he is hurting the people of the state, especially the most vulnerable. Don't let Democrats own that carrying lane. We care more and we will do something about it, and it's about time we start to talk about it.
Yep.
All right, second thing you should be aware of in our quick hits, which are extra quick this week. Chris and his city of Chicago, their pension funds are so underfunded that the city of Chicago actually, in an emergency move, had to lend them money to keep them from having to avoid selling assets to be able to make their pension payments. Because if you don't know, we've talked about it before, under Fritz Kagi, property tax bills in Cook County are abysmally late. And now I'm hearing they may not even arrive this year. We may not even get our tax bills this year in Cook County. And what does that do? What's the big problem aside from the problem that is for working families who are struggling to figure out what they have to pay and where they're going to find it? This really hurts local governments throughout the whole county because they're not getting the funding that they were promised that they're expected to get. So they have to go take loans, waste more taxpayer dollars to try to get through until they can finally get their collections from Cook County. And so this is not only hurting working families, it's screwing local governments throughout the county who then have to go and screw their taxpayers to try to make it through the end of the year before they finally get their money. And we see an example of this in Chicago where their pension funds are so ridiculously underfunded, which is a problem in and of itself, which let's talk about that really quickly. The Chicago pension debt in 2024 surpassed the pension debt of 44 other states. The city of Chicago's pension debt is more than the pension debt of 44 other states. That's why they're in such dire straits. That's why the city of Chicago had to give them a loan. This obviously isn't good for the fiscal health of the biggest city in the state of Illinois, of course run by all Democrats. Gee, I wonder why it's so run poorly fiscally. Chris, I crapped on your city. Any quick thoughts?
I don't live in Chicago, but I do business there, of course. In any case, I think it was poignant when Congressman Quigley a few weeks ago made a very controversial statement, which I don't necessarily agree or disagree with, but I do think it was poignant. where he basically said that the city of Chicago's got to start doing some illegal shit in order to start balancing their books in the future. And look, if it's that bad, it might actually be that bad. Like the city of Chicago might have to start breaking some laws in order to get back to financial solvency. And it's everybody's fault. It's nobody's fault. Who knows? Who knows? It doesn't matter. The problem is you have to take, the true American patriot deals with problems as they are presented in front of him. Okay. And that's what the city of Chicago needs to do. The city of Chicago needs somebody in the mayor's office who is willing to make some Faustian bargains with the law in order to actually bring back fiscal solvency to the city of Chicago. Will it happen? Who knows? The last guy who could have brought fiscal solvency to the city of Chicago didn't even have fiscal solvency in his own campaign. So the bar is pretty low if you want to be mayor of Chicago. So best of luck, people living in the city of Chicago. And if you're a suburban Cook County or Cook County property tax payer, then good luck when the property tax bill come out. I want to keep living in my mom's basement like the rest of us.
All right, let's move to our final segment here. Clown of the week, OG of the week. Anybody you want to give praise to or scorn to in the last week, this is your chance. Jump in with your thoughts, whoever you want to add in here.
I need to give OG of the week to Howard Lutnick from the Trump administration. He's the Commerce Secretary. He did an interview on CNBC tail end of last week and kind of outlined the fact that they're going to be fighting with Nippon Steel about the closure of the Granite City steel plant. It's supposed to be closing in 2027. Howard Lutnick said, we're not going to let that happen. So I'm hopeful that they can accomplish that, bring those jobs back to our community because we need good union paying jobs in the Metro East.
Ooh, Chris, did you hear that?
So bring them home.
I like it. Good start, Michael. Well done. What else you guys got?
I have a very esoteric clown of the week that none of you are going to understand. There's been a lot of tributes to Charlie Kirk, and a lot of them have been very nice, etc. My clown of the week is to the account on Twitter that this post got like tens of thousands of views and likes. It was very strange. Who made an AI video of Charlie Kirk talking to various biblical figures. And it was just very creepy. It was just very strange, just like having Charlie Kirk talk to St. Paul. Don't do things like that. That's not what AI is good for. This is why I don't like AI people. We can honor Charlie Kirk without shoehorning him to biblical scenarios. I saw one person that was praying for Charlie Kirk's resurrection on the third day. That was very strange. Let's get a hold of ourselves here, folks. Like we can mourn Charlie Kirk's death and not go over the cliff here. Thank you.
Fair. It's a fair point. What else you guys got this week?
Chelsea?
I was a big fan of Vice President Vance's final message when he hosted Charlie Kirk's thing, where he pointed out, we all do want unity, but once again, going back to what we've talked about, you can't have unity if I say something and you disagree with me and you automatically say that I'm a Nazi. So I think that the vice president really calling that out and bringing it to the forefront was something that really needed to be said, something that we've said amongst ourselves for years now. And he used his platform to really bring that out.
And he did kind of quote the Nicene Creed or the Apostle Creed.
Always a big fan of that.
I would say I'm a big fan of Joe DuBose. And I got to know Joe over time, and he's an amazing talent. And once again, another younger person. And that's what my takeaway is for the week. We need more young people involved in this process.
Okay, I like it. You guys just focus on OGs, so I'll just give my OGs and then maybe pause in case anybody has anyone else you want to add. I'm going to have probably the weirdest OG that no one ever expected me to say, but my OG this week is Bernie Sanders. Yes, Bernie Sanders. The video he put out talking about how the murder of Charlie Kirk is part of a disturbing rise in political violence that threatens to hollow out our public life. A free society relies on the premise that people can speak out without fear or humiliation. No more political violence. He didn't have the qualifiers that every other leftist is like, Charlie was horrible, but I guess maybe we'll stop violence. It was a powerful statement. I did give him a lot of credit for it. So OG of the week, believe it or not, is Bernie Sanders for me.
Bernie Sanders.
So that would be mine. I'll also give a hat tip to Isabella Miller. She posted one of my tweets on Capitol Facts, and Rich Miller doesn't seem to like me very much, which I guess I don't blame him, because I do kind of give him a hard time. But Isabel, thank you for being a little bit more balanced and letting some people on our side of the aisle have a voice on the blog. I do appreciate that. So hat tip to you. And I got like a half OG, half clown here that we got to talk about. Michael, it's the city of Aurora, right? So we saw in the state of Illinois how all these elected leaders, Michael, you posted this, I'm stealing your thunder, but you didn't say it, so fine. How the state of Illinois, in their notice to governments throughout the state, when Trump said that we had to lower our flags to half-mast, the state of Illinois couldn't even say it was for Charlie Kirk. They said it was for victims of political violence. Then you saw places like Orland Park who tried to say, under their new leadership, which I think they're maybe having some regrets, that it was in remembrance of September 11th, trying to pretend it was something different. But Aurora took it even further under their now super far left mayor there, which they refused to let any of their buildings, any of their departments lower their flags. And yet there were some patriots there who said, screw this, we're going to put the flag at half staff. And then they actually locked it. I'll have Lane pull up the image up on screen. But I don't know. I thought that was a pretty powerful statement of some locals who said, listen, we need to lower our flags to half mast. Obviously, Pritzker quickly did it for Edgar, which is deserved. So now we're no longer having this fight. But I thought it was a pretty powerful image of that lock that they put up there. And they took some guts, because they're probably going to have some retribution there. All right. Anybody have any other? I've got some clowns, but you guys all did OGs. Are you done? You're just all positive?
I did a clown. Okay? I did a clown.
Go ahead. Yeah. Okay. All right. We all good? You guys all got yours in? I'll just be the only bad guy this week.
I mean, you got to give a little bit of a clown to Jimmy Kimmel for trying to say that it was actually Republicans that assassinated Charlie on live TV and then got his show pulled.
But it's okay, because he's left of center. You can only cancel people that are right of center, Michael. Don't you know?
Apparently.
So, all right.
I have a clown.
Oh, go ahead. Go for it.
Oh, yeah. Senator Karina Villa, she posted and was telling people to send her pictures and videos of ICE agents, just showing that she's, once again, on the wrong side of an issue, 80-20 issue. People don't want you doing that. And as we've learned, it can lead to violence.
Yep.
And we had a whole topic we couldn't get to about how Karina Villa is dragging that comptroller's race further and further left, which is good news for us. But there's only so many topics I can pack into one agenda. So we'll get to that in a future week, and we will continue what you just talked about, Chelsie. So it was a good choice. All right, I'll give mine. So you mentioned Joe DuBose, David, and there was a comment on the article that was posted about him. We'll bring it up on screen. We've got the name blocked off on screen, but I'm going to say it out loud because it deserves to be said. This individual, Clifton Bailey, who said, hope they Charlie Kirk this guy before he gets elected. I mean, that's where we are in our politics. I mean, it deserves to be called out every time we see it. This is awful. This is ridiculous. I don't know Joe, but I don't care. It doesn't matter. This has no place in our politics, and it's absolutely a Clown of the Week nomination. By the way, you want to wonder why politicians and candidates like Dabrowski don't take questions from the media at their announcements? Because if you watch the video, immediately after he stopped speaking, there was a member of the media screaming out, how do you feel about Awake Illinois? A gotcha question in the first question, not why are you running? Tell me about your light gov. Like, this is the difference. When JB Pritzker goes up there, it's softball question after softball question after softball question. But when you're on the Republican side, it's gotcha, trying to make you look stupid so that they can get some clicks. So, of course, Republicans would not want to engage the media. This is my constant battle when I'm trying to encourage, for the sake of our democracy, I'm trying to encourage candidates to engage with the media. And yet, this is what they face. If you're a Republican, they're just going to constantly try to skewer you and make you look bad while they keep making Democrats and Pritzker look great. It's hard to blame these candidates who say, fine, I just won't talk to the media. I do kind of get it. I'm not going to lie. Daniel Biss is on my list. Chris, I'll see if you agree with this one. But they did a little bit of a maneuver in Evanston. You see, Daniel Biss, running for Congress, wanted to make it look like he was against the grocery tax. So they had the members of the council vote for it. And then Biss went and vetoed it, and then they overrode the veto. So Biss gets to say that he was fiscally conservative and voted against the grocery tax for working families, while still getting to collect all the grocery tax in the city of Evanston as mayor, and they timed it. Read the articles. They purposely timed it because there's a deadline. You have to do this by a certain date. And so they timed it all so that this could all happen. If Biss actually wanted to stop it, he could have delayed the veto past the deadline and actually killed it. But he wanted to play games and play both sides. It's probably going to work. I get it. It's good politics. But I noticed, and I'm going to make him my clown of the week because I saw just how overt the politics was in that, and somebody should talk about it.
Well done. That's that. I am every so often I hear a political maneuver where that I just it makes me warm and fuzzy inside. That is oh, that's beautiful. That's like ballet in terms of the hatchet man politics right there. Though Collin, if you want to help somebody get elected in that race, I think his closest competitor is Kat Abu Ghazala. So you can send her that information. I'm sure she'll run with it, but I don't know if you'll do that.
Well, we'll see. We'll see. Last two here before we move on. State Representative Sharon Chung is my clown of the week as well, because she in a town hall this week said she hopes to change the estate tax to help Illinois farmers. And this is just total BS. I'm sick and tired of this. Sharon Chung did this all of last cycle, where she carried the bill to reform the estate tax. The reality is, ask anybody down in Springfield, she put a brick on it and purposely kept it from moving forward. So she got to take credit for helping farmers, when in reality, she and several others were the reason why estate tax reform couldn't move forward and family farmers couldn't get the help that they need in the state of Illinois. But Sharon Chung is going to do it again. I really hope somebody holds her to task in that district. I think it's 91 off the top of my head. She deserves to be held responsible for this because our family farmers deserve better in this state. And this is naked politics that's hurting our farmers, and something should be done about it. Here's my last one. It's going to get me in trouble, but I don't care. There's several social media posts by an individual. And listen, there's all these fights between different politicos and consultants, and I don't take part in it. So I'm not calling out this individual because of those various personality conflicts between politicos, because I think I've proven in this podcast, we have competitors on, we have people who've talked crap about me on, so it's not about that. It's about the post, and we'll bring it up because you should see it, where Terry Newsom came out and said, I want to thank the Northern Illinois Proud Boys who joined me at this overpass rally in support of ICE and Trump and Charlie Kirk. I think we're going to see more Proud Boys coming back to support us, and he did several other videos. Listen, this hurts the party, all right? Promoting the Proud Boys as an operative of the Republican Party means that every one of your candidates is now going to be attacked for the Proud Boys. All other Republicans are potentially going to be attacked for this. You are hurting the party by doing this. It's not about personality conflicts. It's about simply, please be smarter. Don't make posts like this. Don't do stupid things like this, because all the rest of us are going to have to answer for your stupidity in the next election. With that, we'll do closing comments. We'll let our guests go last. So Michael and Chris, I think I made Chris go first last time. So Michael, go ahead.
Well, what a week. And we got some announcements. I think there's more announcements to come. So keep an eye on it. It's petitions for the next, 60 days. And if you aren't circulating already, you better get off the couch and get after it, because November 3rd is going to be here before you know it. So
careful, Michael. The Sun-Times is going to run an expose on how you just incited violence.
Yeah, they probably will.
Chris, your final thoughts?
Look, I need to make a appeal to the Smoke for Room audience. I really need a haircut. I know I don't got much hair left. The beard's getting out of control. If I don't look a little bit more respectable on next week's podcast, I need you guys to just flood the comment section with Chris looks like a bum, all these sorts of things. I need to go to the barber, okay? Hold me accountable, because you would have held me accountable if I was running for comptroller, I'm sure. Somebody would have. Maybe not. This is the only Republican.
Hey, you can still run for treasurer.
No, not interested.
David Blumenshine for treasurer.
This is the only Republican Party. Nobody would have held me accountable for anything I would have done in the comptroller's race. I need you, Smoke-Filled Room viewers, Democrat, Republican, Independent, to make sure Chris gets a haircut this week. Thank you. Have a wonderful weekend, and get off your ass and get some petitions.
Chris will get the award for the weirdest closing comments of the week on that one. But hey, we're 100 and some odd episodes in. Sometimes it's hard to come up with new content. I think, David, we could agree you brought the heat, but I think we can all agree how much we love Chelsie. So let's let Chelsie have the final word. David, go ahead.
Well, I appreciate being on the Smoke-Filled Room. You know what? Like Michael said, it's imperative that we get out there and exercise the action part of what is needed in the state. We all, we know who's going to show up and vote. There's going to be roughly 1.7 million likes. Shannon Terese for comptroller, the last go around, she spent $60,000 and she got the same amount of votes as Darren Bailey. So net of it is, we know Republicans to a certain degree are going to show up. It's our job to go out and encourage others to come along. If you're tired of seeing what politics looks like in Illinois, well, stop talking about it. Help another candidate out. Get the petition and walk your neighborhood, walk your precinct, become a precinct committee person.
You know, and listen, I hate to give Chris Welsh any praise, but his phrase here is something Republicans should learn from, which is winners do the work. And I think a lot of times we Republicans like to talk and post on social media, but maybe not so much with the work. If you want to win in a state, especially a state where you're behind, you got to actually go out there and put in the work. So I couldn't echo your thoughts any more than I'm doing now. Great thoughts. All right, Chelsie, close us out.
All right. My advice is people just get off social media, get outside, meet your neighbors, talk to them, go play with your kids. I think we spend way too much time in our little echo chambers. And if we're out there talking to our neighbors, you're going to be overall happier. But then to go into the politics, it's also a game of addition. And there's no better way to get more voters to vote for our candidates than for us to be out there being the light that they need to see, that we have the right views, we have the right values, and we're going to be the best people out there to go spread that message.
Well, listen, our Republican policies, conservative policies, they work. Let's stop being so damn afraid to actually say it. I like closing on that. We've already gone way over our time, so I'm going to skip my closing thoughts and just thank our guests, thank our panel for all your time this week. Thank you to our viewers. Thank you to our producer, Lane Davis. We'll catch you next week on the Smoke-Filled Room.